Just over a year ago, in August 2021, a local bus company did a charity cycle ride in aid of 2 local hospices. The ride was from Newark to Skegness, which from my house door to Newark included would be 150 miles. Now, I agreed to go along as a kind of mascot because I'm no cyclist and there's no chance of me riding 150 miles. As you might expect, I had the remains of a late 80s kickstart Tomos laying around which could possibly be built into a working vehicle in the time frame, which was about 10 days. I did think, however, it would be more appropriate to be pedal start, and I had a dead pedal start engine, so you join me as I'm dissecting engines trying to make a good one.
Pedal, disc spring, lovely. Impact screwdriver, might need the impact.
Now, this engine is of questionable heritage. I bought it from an Italian eBayer. It was surprisingly cheap, and it's the only pedal start engine I've seen for sale in the UK ever, because they weren't officially imported here, so they're rare as hen's teeth. It was sold as turning over with compression. I got it delivered to my house and it wouldn't turn over, it was seized. So I'm breaking into it at the moment to find out what's wrong with it, and unfortunately it turns out not to be good news.
So in here there's definitely been some water, which is fine because I've got 2 more engines down there that I'm going to hopefully just swap the pedal start mechanism over from. The original plan was to rebuild this, so I'm glad I went with that. Plus I think it's got the Iskra ignition in it rather than Bosch. So I don't know if that's an advantage or not, or a disadvantage.
The rest of the footage from taking this engine apart was lost, but I do have some pictures of the piston and the crankshaft and the state of the bearings, just to show you what a mess they were. This engine will be a good source of parts, and it might be savable, but it's probably not worth it.
I'll leave this one here and pick up on, I think, that engine. This was, is it that one? Yeah, I think it's that one. It was the first A3 I ever rebuilt years ago. I'll put a link to the video of doing that in the description, and I'll be watching that video as well because I can't remember exactly what I did to it. So this could all be for nothing and it could all need to come apart again once I've watched that, but for the time being I haven't got time to watch it, so I'm going to take this one, take the kickstart mechanism out, swap the side covers, put the pedal start mechanism in, pedal start bike, yes.
So when I filmed these engine rebuilds, I went into great detail about it. I showed you exactly what I was doing and showed you exactly how to do it yourself if you were to do it, explained the principles of how the starting mechanisms work, and then the files got corrupted, so I lost all of that. So you're just going to have to take my word for it what happened. I'm about to take the clutch side cover off the engine that we're actually going to be using. And I've already taken the pedal start mechanism off the drowned engine from Italy, and basically I'm doing a transplant of internals for the starting mechanism. I didn't need to rebuild this engine as such because it had already been done, and I ran out of time to do it at home, so most of it was actually done at work on a bus on my lunch break. Which incidentally is exactly where I'm editing this video, hence the background noise from the centre of Nottingham. Here we have a luxurious bird's eye view of the clutch cover coming off. The shaft on the far right hand side there is the kickstart shaft that we're trying to remove, and it's attached by a chain to that stack of gears in the middle. In order to get both of those off, you need to remove the clutch nut in the middle and then pull the clutch off, and then the other two should just lift out with very little force, all in one piece. For anyone that was wondering what it actually looks like when I alluded to it earlier, this is what rebuilding a Tomos engine on a service bus on your lunch break looks like. So next we moved on to the frame, and here's the wheels stripped ready for painting, and then primed them, hung up on a washing line in my garden, and then sprayed them dark blue, which is company colours. The wheels were then further refurbished with brand new wheel bearings, new tubes and part worn tyres because I had some lying around. Next we went on to painting the side covers and the frame. These were also in company colours. The company didn't know I was going to do this. This was entirely a surprise for them, so that was sort of the idea with it. As you can see, they're cream and blue, and then I got it together enough to start actually building important bits together, like, you know, sorting out the wiring and that kind of thing, putting handlebars on it. All this went by very quickly, but I needed it to be a usable test bed so that I could test the engine. So just before midnight on Thursday the 29th of July, I managed to get the engine and frame attached together. This was literally the 11th hour in more ways than one, because the MOT was booked for 9:10 the next morning. So I had to get the engine running, timed and jetted, bearing in mind that I'd put an aftermarket carb on there, and have it running well enough for them to be able to check the lights in the morning. So here we are just after midnight, with me trying to start the bike on the lane next to my house without waking the neighbours up. One works. Indicator. Too rich. Okay, so take two. I've jetted down from 60 to 55. A good sign, maybe it needs choke. Throttle. I need to slightly attack the idle speed.
all works apart from the indicators. That's enough for the MOT until, well, once I do the indicators, I guess. So that in the morning.
And that's exactly what I did. I sorted the indicators in the morning. It did make me half an hour late for the MOT, but I sorted them in the morning. It passed with almost flying colours, a couple of advisories but nothing major, and then I could take it home and carry on with the paintwork. I was at work straight after the MOT, so there was no time to do anything then, so I continued with the finishing touches on the Saturday, the day before the trip. So we got a new top box, we got more paint done, and we got decals applied. I'm quite proud of this bike. As you can see, there's an air horn on the side, which is controlled from a battery in the top box. And I'm quite proud of how well it turned out, looking more or less the same as a Fleet bus, but in smaller form, which was the idea. I'm particularly pleased of this quirky little thing, the unladen weight on the side. I thought it was only right to do it accurately. "7 AM on the morning of the ride, I took this photo, put my helmet on, started the bike up and rode it into the unknown to the starting point in Newark. None of the other riders had seen it before, none of them knew what I was building, they just knew I was turning up on a bike. We then moved on to Beaumont House Hospice, which was the start point. Here's a picture of us leaving, which is a press picture, and we rode for another 140 miles to Skegness. I had no idea if it was even going to make it as far as the start point in Newark, because the timing hadn't been set up right, the jetting hadn't been set up right. I just basically in the end guessed with a stock jet, even though it was a larger carb, but because I hadn't done any porting work on it, I assume it was just acting like an original stock carb, so it's got the 53 jet, which would be the standard for a 1412. The other riders absolutely loved it, despite the fact that I was poisoning them whenever I was in front of them with my two-stroke smoke. It worked quite nicely as a resting place for people with sore arses, and for anyone wondering if the air horn worked... Horn, Bill, horn! Yes, it did. Eventually we ended up in Skegness after, I think, about 6 hours of riding. We hung around for an hour, had a bag of chips, and took some publicity photos, and then it was time to ride back again. All in all, not that eventful really for me. I did at one point run out of fuel, but I had a jerry can on me, and other than that it was a nice chilled out, relaxed ride, which was amazing considering the fact that I had no idea if the bike was actually going to work as intended. The bike, which was known as TM123, as that was to be the next vehicle on the fleet at work, became a regular vehicle of mine. I was often riding it to work and shopping and things like that. The top box was quite handy for carrying luggage, and also my boss enjoyed it so much that he invited me to display it at the village show where he was, and also he did a vintage vehicle night where he showed off his vehicles, and it was a feature there as well, complete with a piece of paper on the top box there which explains the story of the bike. So it's late August 2022. We're in my shed at the moment. The bike is currently residing here. It's just come off the road a couple of weeks ago now due to the tax and insurance running out, and I'm going to rotate it off the fleet for a year or so and hopefully do some work to make it a bit more of a usable vehicle, like change the engine seals and that sort of thing, because it's still very, very rough and ready. I'll talk you through some of the features and some of the less fortunate things that have happened to it during the time that I've been riding it, but it's generally been a very reliable bike over the last year. So, first of all, the fuel tank is not that good. It could probably do with taking apart and having the tank lined. I don't think going to do that. The problem is it's got a pinhole or something about 2/3 of the way up, so if you fill it more than halfway, it leaks fuel, which is what has happened on the front mudguard there. So that could do with repainting. Also, I bought a side cover that was cut down for a carb, but unfortunately it's on the wrong side. So it's got half a side cover on that side, and the carb is there. It's got a Delato Shaft 1515 cable choke. I have actually, since the ride, attached the cable choke to the actual choke switch on the handlebars, which you can't really see, but it is there. It's still running the standard 53 jet. I thought it'd need jetting higher because it's a larger car, but because I haven't enlarged any of the ports or done any porting work at all on the cylinder, it's essentially still acting as a 12 or 14 mil carb because it's just going through the same size hole as it used to be. It's got a MLM Shah intake on it as well, which is probably worth more than the carb, I think, actually. Up to wiring, we've got these Chinese switches on. These were a lot cheaper, and in the end it worked out quite well because there's extra switches. So for example, there's the start switch there for the electric start, which it doesn't have. That is wired to this relay and it's powered off this battery, and that is the air compressor for the air horn. I would show you, but the battery's flat and I've just swapped it for another battery and that one's dud. So the wiring for the DC portion of it is there. It's totally isolated from the AC stuff. The AC wiring is here. I made my own wiring loom, so I had to work out what everything did. The wiring loom I've made is a bit shonky, but bearing in mind, can you see it in there? Bearing in mind that I made it on a bus, I don't think it's that bad. The speedo cable has snapped. The speedo drive is seized, so the speedo has never worked since I've been using it, but it's actually been alright really. I've got a little cycle computer on there, and that's about it really. I was going to drag it out of the shed to show you, but by the time I've done that I wouldn't have been able to do it today because I've only got a few minutes, and I'm gonna, you know, it's already taken me a year to edit this video, so I thought I'd get it over with. But yeah, it's still got all the decals on it. They're starting to fade a bit. The bus decals are doing great. The paint has chipped off a little bit in places. It's just from wear and the fact that I didn't lacquer it and didn't really prep the frame that well. It was just all about rushing. So I don't know if I'm going to leave it in that cosmetic condition or touch all the paint up and stuff. I quite like the fact it's telling a bit of a story. Oh, and of course I've fitted a bell as well. So there we are. That is the story of TM123, the bus bike. Hope you enjoyed it, guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Oh, and also, there's a sneak preview of what might be coming soon. Thanks for watching, guys. Please check out Vintage Moped World on Facebook. It's a Facebook group created by Johnny from the Vintage Mopeds channel with a little bit of help from me, and it's taking off quite nicely. It's kind of a friendly worldwide moped community. Check us out. Thank you very much.